Hi, as part of our work of representing the voice of business, I am delighted to welcome you to this, a new video series entitled Talking Thames Valley. We've invited respected journalist Andrew Peach to have conversations with a selection of our members who represent industries across the wider region and businesses large and small. They're going to share their stories of the challenges and opportunities that they and their clients are facing. And also we're going to be using it as part of our wider campaign to ensure that in an election year that the Thames Valley business community is recognised for its contribution to the wider challenges that the UK faces. Sit back and enjoy.
So let me ask you first then to tell me who you are and what your role is in business, and then we'll talk a bit more.
Good afternoon, I'm Ruth Bagley. I'm an independent consultant with various different hats, but in this context, I'm a member of the Thames Valley Chamber. I'm also a representative of the Chamber on the British Chambers of Commerce Transport Strategy Group, and I particularly chair the Western Rail Link to Heathrow working group, which I've been involved with for nearly 15 years, one way and another.
Because it's one of those things that's talked about and talked about and talked about, and we're still waiting for it to happen. How close are we, do you think, to having a proper link into Heathrow from this area?
We've always been quite close, but we got in January 2020, we were almost there to get a commitment. We'd got a business case which had been approved by the Treasury, subject only to a funding agreement. So January 2020, the government and Heathrow and others were working towards a funding agreement, and of course various things got in the way.
I mean, even at that point politically, you had an administration was actually quite into infrastructure projects, that kind of thing. So all the winds were going in the right direction, and then COVID happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was a general commitment to infrastructure. Western Rail, and I've heard people right the way across the political spectrum, the business spectrum, quote it as a no-brainer. Everyone thought it was the right thing to do, but it needed funding and finance. We were very hopeful that was going forward. COVID happened. The resources of both government and Heathrow, shall we say, took a little bit of a bashing, to put it politely, and things were paused, but taken to a controlled pause. The project hasn't been cancelled. Network Rail neatly packed it up and will be ready to revisit it as soon as they got the go-ahead. So what we've been doing, particularly over the last year, 18 months, is saying, right, the case is there, the case was proven, how are we going to finance it? We've had some specialists looking at whether there's a solution, a model which would enable a large amount of private sector investment, so to take the place of a lot of the investment that would go in. We have a tentative understanding of a model, so our next step is to test it in the real world, so to speak. So we're in the midst of commissioning a piece of work which will revisit the business case, the economic case, all the benefits, and hopefully prove that Western Rail is still financially viable and will still deliver the scale of benefit, if not more so, than we previously envisaged. So
in a world where so many more people are working from home, not travelling into London, let alone travelling abroad or vice versa, is it still as needed? Is that part of the case still as robust as it was 5 years ago?
Well, that's part of the test. Will people still want to travel? But of course, Heathrow has recently reached the capacity it had before COVID. So the same number of people are flying out of Heathrow today as were in 2019. So that demand is still there. The question is, would they still use the train, or would they, is it a different group of people, for instance? So business people, leisure people, and so on. We need to test that. But there's every indication that the same demand would be there. And of course, Heathrow had virtually reached full capacity. There's very little more that Heathrow would be able to do to expand its current passenger numbers. So we also need to test what might be as well. We're also we're making sure that we're not ignoring some of the changes that have been made. So the impact of Crossrail, the Elizabeth line, for instance, will that change the demand? Will, as you say, people working from home, or is business travelling less out of the country? But clearly people are not travelling less out of the country. So we're testing all of those things to see whether the strength of the case we had is still strong today. If the return on investment looks as sound as it was before, and it was good before, if it looks as sound as it was before, then we can start to talk investment, private investment. It's not just envisaged that we would expect, or could anyone expect at the moment, the government, any government, to be investing that scale of money. So the Thames Valley Chamber has taken it upon itself, given its long association with the project, to try and find a solution, and then to talk to government, whoever that is.
And this idea of private investment in infrastructure projects is seemingly the way forward in lots of areas. You know, that's the way in which they're talking about funding the last bit of Crossrail into Euston as well, isn't it? To say, well, if the benefit is there, if the case is there, then the private money would follow that.
Yeah, and it's to a certain extent that's been the case now for several years. In I think it was 2017, 2018, the government was really interested in getting business, private investment or business, to invest in infrastructure projects. At that time, they actually discounted Western Rail as a project where that would be necessary. And the reason for that was it was so well developed, there was little opportunity for the private sector to get involved. Now it's on pause. That position has changed, and obviously there is a need now to finance something like this.
And how does the Thames Valley Chamber of Commerce, which you're also involved in, how does the chamber gather people together, get involved in making a business case, try and persuade politicians of whatever party to pursue something like this, to take it off pause?
Well, as I say, if we can come up with a financial model which we think would work, then we'd be taking that to government. But what we have done, and the way the Chamber's operated to date, is to bring together the interests within the Chamber and some interests who aren't members of the Chamber to push the project forward, but also to use the expertise the Chamber has access to in some of the businesses to work on the financial model, to help to use Chamber members' cash, indeed, to help finance the economic and business case that we're looking for. What the Chamber can also do, and something I've been involved in for many years now, is to make sure that all the interests in Western Rail are pushing together. Because although it's actually a very short railway in a corner of the Thames Valley, the impact is on about 14 million people. So we've consistently been talking to South Wales and the several English regions which have a direct interest in making it happen. So the Welsh have always been supportive of it. It will bring Cardiff and Swansea 30 minutes closer to Heathrow than today. It'll bring Plymouth 30 minutes closer. So you've got several regions as far away as Hereford and Worcester and down to Southampton, everything you can think of in between, which will have a benefit from this. So we've also been ensuring that all the chambers in that footprint, as many MPs as possible, local authorities as possible, other interests, some of the universities are interested in it, some of the tourist associations are interested, because this will, of course, will bring the South West and South Wales closer to Heathrow, making it much more accessible to incoming tourism. So we've been trying to coordinate that as well. So our role has been find a solution, but keep our stakeholders with us. Now, we haven't done a great deal with stakeholders for the last couple of years, because we want to be able to give them a solution and say, right, this looks as though it'll work, come on with us. But we're beginning to reactivate that. The other thing we've done, and we've done consistently in the past, is not just talk to MPs on an individual basis, but work with there's a all-party parliamentary group for Western Rail, which is chaired by Tandesi from Slough, but also the secretary is James Sunderland, Conservative member for Bracknell. So we've got cross-party interest. We also, from time to time, approach ministers where we have something to say, and we also ensure that various other groups, such as England's Economic Heartland or the South East Transport Forum, that they too mention Western Rail, they identify it as important to them because it is important to them, so that everyone has got a voice in pushing this forward.
Yeah, it's very interesting because obviously we're entering a period of political debate about what priorities should be, different decision-making, new strategy after the election, potentially anyway, in the coming months. So we'll see how that plays out. It's interesting to hear this is all very much back as a live debate after a bit of mothballing for a couple of years, though.
Controlled pause.
Ruth, lovely chatting with you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.